Hello, WCA. Mike Amore. Wanted to show you guys a game that we looked at the camp, and I want to thank everyone who was in attendance. We had a great time. Eric and Mike were the assistants, and the kids had a good time as always. Really had a blast with you guys. It was terrific. But anyway, I don't remember. I think it was Wednesday. We took a look at this game that was played by world champion Emmanuel Lasker. Lasker held the world championship for 27 years. And he's playing a gentleman by the name of Jacques Mises. My French accent, I probably said something very different than his name. Anyway, the reason we showed the game was it was an opportunity to look at what we call breaking the rules in chess. Now, you guys all know the rules, like how the pieces move, but you learn principles all the time. So let's look at move one. There's a pawn on d4. That's an opening principle. Control the center with pawns. So breaking the rules means you kind of do things that you heard were not good when you were first starting out. So on move one, black answered d4 with the move f5, which is known as the Dutch defense. And that's kind of breaking a rule for beginners. And that rule is don't move pawns on the side of the board, especially ones that weaken the king. But the Dutch defense is playable in that, let's take a look at the positive, it controls the square e4, making it a little difficult for white to play, although white could actually play e4 right now and give away a pawn, try to take advantage of black being open a little bit. The more classical response to d4 would be the move d5, clearly, because again, it opens a line for a minor piece, and just like f5, it controls the square e4, and then, of course, the other main move after d4, a lot of grandmasters prefer this move, knight f6, and again, we're controlling e4 and developing a minor piece. The problem with the Dutch is it does control the e4 square, but it doesn't develop a minor piece, and it doesn't physically have a pawn in the center. That can lead to problems if you don't follow up correctly. Lasker, who was a big fan of, well, actually a lot of the players back in those days, used to play the Queen's Gambit declined a lot, and that would come about, say, after d4, d5. Let's take a look at our famous d5 move here. And then what if white just puts out the move c4? I'm sorry, it would look like this. We would have a Queen's Gambit declined, right? So Lasker, who's kind of like that idea, after this move, after f5, just says, you know what, I'm going to put a pawn on c4, which is one of the main responses to the Dutch anyway. And here's where Mises starts to get a little creative, and I don't want to use the word careless, but maybe I could. He played c5, and it's not that common a response in the Dutch this early. The reason is you're pushing pawns that are kind of on opposite sides of the board, and you're not developing the minor pieces. And Lasker just takes it straight away and said, okay, I'm going to take the pawn, you figure out how to get it back, or take advantage of the fact that you knock my pawn out of the center, but because I have the white pieces, okay, great, I'll just play it. And everybody at the camp pretty much agreed that, white was okay to do this. Black decides to get the pawn back right away. This is a cute trick everybody should know. Give a little queen check, and now how to block the check. Well, Lasker just develops a minor piece, and then queen takes c5. Okay, now here is where immediately Lasker started to punish black for breaking those rules, not playing in the center with the minor pieces and pawns. And to do that, you often have to open lines and try to take advantage of hitting the queen. Like I could do it right now. I could just play bishop e3 and gain a tempo. You're going to have to move your queen away unless I'll take you otherwise. But having my bishop on e3 might block my e pawn. I mean, that's playable, of course. But Lasker just plays e4, and he said, okay, I'm going to strike in the middle right away, and let me see what you want to do. Black took, and when the knight takes back, the knight hits the queen, gaining a tempo. Queen went to c7, and very creative play now by Lasker. He played the move knight h3, and what we did at the camp is we didn't explain the reason why. We had the kids find it, and it took a really long time to find the purpose of this move. It keeps the light squared bishop open. You're not going to put your knight on e2. So like, why not f3? I mean, that this is the most natural move in the world, is to put the knight here. So we said to the kids, okay, so what's the reason? And it has to do with the fact that the queen on c7 is still exposed. So the knight on h3 will prepare the move bishop f4 if he wants to play it, or, as you'll see in the game, after g6 was played, Lasker played knight f4. So you can't take it, obviously. It's protected by the bishop. But do you see why he wanted the knight on f4 and how he took that route? He could have gotten there by playing here and then here, but by playing h3 first, again, he did not block in this bishop on f1. So now that the knight is on f4, black continues with his development. That was the purpose of g6. And now black gets hit with knight d5. And that's annoying because, again, the queen has to move. She goes to d8, and already black is in trouble here. There are a couple of ways to play this. You could play the move bishop f4, setting a little trap that offers a pawn down here on b2. You guys see how this bishop is eyeing that pawn? Well, as a little reminder, if you're playing black and all you've done is move your queen a whole bunch of times, you have one piece in the game, and you use that piece to take a pawn on the other side of the board, you're asking for trouble. How about bishop c7? Ouchie. Yeah, I had a Taekwondo master who was like really good, and anytime he got hit, you'd expect him to really shout these words of like a warrior. He used to go, ouchie, and I use it all the time now. Yeah, bishop c7 traps the queen. That's not pleasant. Anyway, so Mises did not snatch the pawn yet, because Lasker didn't play bishop f4. He played bishop g5, and it sort of set a trap because he's making it difficult for this knight to get into the game. You know, if you play knight f6 right away, he's just going to take it. And when you take back, this structure is going to occur. And after knight to d6 check, you can see this is very unpleasant for black. Material is equal. White's structure is better. If you look at the pawns, whites are kind of in a better spot, 3 on each side. There's an isolated pawn here already blockaded by a knight. The king has to move, so he'll lose the right to castle. So it's really not pleasant for black to play this. So what else do you do with the knight here? Well, you could play knight h6, but then you get hit with bishop takes e7, and there are some problems here. Like, say, queen a5 check, just to get her out of danger, and then pawn b4 hits the queen again, and you're going to get in trouble here because I don't know where you're going to move your queen. Say you go to a6, I don't know where else. I mean, there's other choices, but knight d6, and you're going to have to give up your queen. Otherwise, it's checkmate. Are you allowed to do that, by the way? Just, you know, save the queen and tell them, look, I won't give you my queen, but, you know, just don't checkmate me. It doesn't work that way. Black is in check. Yeah, this is bad. Okay, so bishop g5 is a crafty move. He's telling Mises, okay, how are you developing that knight? And Mises now decides to go for the pawn down here on b2. There are some problems. This is not an ordinary position. There are a lot of clues in this position that should be signaling you right now. Both kings are still in the middle. Black has moved his queen a number of times. Both sides still have pieces to develop, although it should be clear that white's pieces are further advanced than black's. And also look at the difference between the two queens. The black queen is miserably stuck there on d8, and the white queen has a lot of options. So the move I believe that Mises may have missed here was this nice in-between move. He doesn't want to lose his rook. I mean, or maybe he does. He probably doesn't even care. I mean, if this rook gets captured at some point, the queen takes back. You look at that diagonal. This is awful for black. But he missed this nice in-between move, knight d6 check, because the e-pawn is pinned. You don't want to take the pawn. You're going to lose your queen. You guys see that little pin here? I'll give you a little magical highlight. Anyway, yeah, and I have green ink on my finger, so I just trace it up on the screen, and that's how that arrow comes. And it's really straight and neat. I've been practicing. So knight d6 check, and then all of a sudden king goes to f8, and then another in-between move, we give a check. And, this is not the first time that black has been caught in openings like this, where his king is getting pushed around, his queen is running to too many squares, he's moving the same minor piece twice like this bishop, and problems. So what to do? You're in check. If you immediately play knight f6, always look for checks and captures, right? Everybody found the move bishop h6 instantly. And I highlighted those two light squares at the top of the board because this knight on d6 takes those away from the king. So the only square open is g8. And now you just move your rook out of the way, and then also gaining a tempo, attacking that black bishop. I don't know, let's say he parks himself on d4. Now you have a cute move. Thank you for the free bishop. Can you guys see what happens if the queen takes that knight? That's correct. You're going to lose this pawn here on c7, and you'll probably not like the outcome. I'll just show it to you really quick. That's a check and a fork, and really not pretty at all. Okay? So anyway, so that's not going to work. So what to do here? Well, to get out of check, knight f6 didn't look so well. So it looks like the only other choice you're going to do is bishop f6. So after bishop f6, now Lasker just looks at the position and goes, okay, what do all the fair trades in this position leave me with? And this is a very difficult concept to understand in chess. When you have your pieces in attacking position, most of the time you don't want to make fair trades unless you cash in. And that expression, to cash in, means to gain a lot of material or kind of give your opponent permanent weaknesses that they can't get rid of as the game goes on. So here, Lasker has to be careful not to make a whole bunch of fair trades and let black escape, but black is in trouble. So he makes the trade. He takes on f6. And now again, how to take back. If you take with the pawn right away, there's this really nice move, queen a3. And this move was in Lasker's notes. So way back in 1889, that's when this game was played, Lasker had written in his notes that this move was available to him. So you're threatening a really nice discovered check. So say you move your king out of the way, and then knight c7. What does it do? Well, it traps the rook. And same deal. If the queen happens to take this, you have the same trick, but in reverse. You just have knight e8, and you're winning the queen on c7. Excuse me. So what to do? So after the knight hops into c7, you could get hit with a check, and there is a move that Lasker played in the game that was in this variation. So we asked the kids, well, how to get out of check? And a lot of kids said right away, bishop here so we can maintain the right to castle. But Lasker may just comfortably put the king on d2. And that looks so weird, right? You have your king in the middle of the board, but be aware of what it does. The bishop is free to enter the game any way he pleases now. And at some point, this rook here on a1 is going to slide over and hit the queen. And then the black king is going to be suddenly surrounded with a whole bunch of white pieces. So this is sort of breaking the rules as well. Do I want to put my king in the middle of the board after a check? Most of the time, absolutely not. But do you understand why here in this position, it works out really well for white? So that line did not work out so well. So after Lasker took, let's go back here, after he took on f6, Mises just develops the knight. And again, it's kind of rare seeing somebody taking, trading off all his pieces. But after the trades, this position was left on the board, and it's highly favorable to white as long as you find the correct follow-up. And Lasker did. He played the move queen to d5. And by playing queen to d5, he centralizes his queen with like the biggest threat. I mean, I hope you guys see, number one, all the black pieces are still stuck at the top of the board. And number two, queen here is checkmate. So that's an issue. Black can't develop his pieces. He has to stop the mate. So he gave a check. Okay, so does this position look familiar to you? It should. Remember this one with the king on d2? Well, after queen e7 check, guess what Lasker does? He just plays king d2. And that king is so safe on that square. King moves out of the way, opening the line for his rook, and then simply rook e1, gaining a tempo. Now remember, the queen has to guard that f7 square, so she goes to f8. And here Lasker found a very clever way to get this rook into the game. You could bring your bishop out, but Lasker said, you know what? I'm going to play here for two reasons. One, it allows me to lift my rook. And if black doesn't do anything about h4, well, then I'm going to play h5. And then I'm going to start opening you up. And that's going to be a real issue for the black king. So after h4, black stopped the idea with h5, and then Lasker just lifted his rook. So he's leaving the minor piece behind, developing the rooks first. So again, that's another rule that was kind of broken. You guys were taught, look, develop the minor pieces before the rooks. Okay, but there's a real situation why you're not going to do that here. You know, castle your king immediately. Well, look at the white king. He's in the middle of the board on d2. If you put your king on d2 in a normal position, you're going to get crushed. This is not a normal position. It's very sharp. The black king is in danger, and while black is undeveloped, white is bringing those rooks into the game. Black plays knight to c6, and then rook h2 e3, which is creating a threat to hop itself up to the top of the board, trapping the black queen. Now here in the game, black played queen to d8, thinking that queen f7 is not that big a deal now because the king can hide on h6. And the idea of that move, as you'll see, is it allows her to get out of trouble with a check. But this is the game continuation. It's really bad anyway because of rook e8, rook took, rook took. There's the queen check, and Lasker just goes in for the trade because after the trade, there's a bishop up here on c8 hanging. And this is the game continuation. And I'm assuming that Lasker just saw this in his mind and didn't look for anything better. So the rook took, the knight took, and you know, don't forget, I highlighted there's an extra piece down here. The problem for black, they do have one pawn for the piece, but the remaining black pawns are weak. One is already being attacked now. The white king is very well placed for this ending, and this is just a completely losing ending. This would be a nice position to play out for practice, so Mises played a couple of more moves and then just resigned. However, what we did with the camp, and this was really cool, when we went back to this position after queen to d8, so you guys remember why he did that. After Lasker doubled his rooks on the e-file, the queen got out of the way, anticipating this move rook e8. It turns out Lasker missed a forced mate, and it took the whole class a lot of time to find it, including the two candidate masters that were helping me out. Both Eric and Mike missed the idea right away, so you know, don't feel bad because Lasker missed it in the game, but there's a forced checkmate. It's in 6 moves, depending on how black plays, but you want to stop your video, try to figure it out. Really cool sequence. Stop it, see how you do. Okay, my friends, how many of you found queen f7 check, king h6, and look at every check and capture, no matter how ridiculous they are. Queen takes pawn. You've got to be kidding me. That's a whole queen. Well, there are no squares for the king, so he has to take, and now you have a forced mate. Can you find it? Okay, if you didn't find it originally, try to find this one. This is mate in 4. Give a check. Well, you have 2 choices. If you go to h7, you get hit with bishop to d3 check. If you block the check with the pawn, I'm just going to take it. Well, not me, but I like to say me because it makes me feel like I'm the one doing the checkmate. Only one way to get out of check, my friends. And then checkmate in 1. Now, you know, this is mate, right? Knight f7. Wouldn't it be something if Lasker just decided to take an undeveloped bishop up here on c8 instead of checkmating the king? No, that's not going to happen. Anyway, thanks again for coming to the camp. I'm sorry we couldn't do more time, more than 1 week, but the city of Harrison had a whole bunch going on this year, and they only gave us the 1 week. You guys were the best. All right? Really enjoyed myself. I will see you in September.